Hello everyone in POS 160. My name is Levi Ellsworth and this is my response video. Today I'm going to be responding to Sebastian Bohutier's video. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that name correctly, but I'm doing my best. We're going to be talking about Samuel Huntington and the Clash of Civilizations, which to me is an extremely interesting debate, and so I'm very excited to get into this. Not a lot of fun thinking about it, so I'm looking forward to this. But the case that Mr. Sebastian was making was that there is a clash of civilizations, and I don't really fully agree with that, and so I'm going to explain. In his video, he talked about two different examples, two different pieces of evidence to support Samuel Huntington's his theory. So he talked about 9/11 with Al-Qaeda attacking the U.S., and then the war in Ukraine that's currently going on. So when it comes to 9/11, I think culture is definitely something that played a role, and I think that's the stronger of the two arguments. But I don't think that everything that was going into 9/11 and all of the reasoning behind that terrible act could have been boiled down just to difference in culture between the Middle East and the U.S. And so I think to simplify it to a point of just saying that it was a clash of cultures wouldn't really be giving us the whole picture. And then when it comes to Ukraine is a really interesting, very interesting example, because culture is definitely playing a role in that war. But the sense that I'm getting is that it's playing more of a role in the response side of things from Ukraine than it is in the aggression from Russia. Because we have the nationalist Ukrainians, like you were talking about, and then we have the Russian sympathizers who are supporting this war, who are hoping that Russia will be able to take back Ukraine. But studying this, the sense that I get is that Russia, again, is not invading Ukraine because of cultural differences. I don't think that's Putin's reasoning at all. I think a lot of it is just boiling down to power and economics and his he feeling threatened by NATO. And so, again, while culture is worth analyzing here, I don't think that's what's instituting this war. I don't think that fault line is really the catalyst that's bringing this all about. And so going further into Huntington's theory, I think it's worth picking apart a couple of problems that I have with it. I know the professor already mentioned that it is a little overly simplistic, and I would definitely agree with that. The idea that, like he said, we're just going to kind of lump all of Asia together isn't really productive and can be a little bit offensive. And I think there's kind of this hysterical irony here where so much of how the world sees America, the stereotype is that we're culturally idiotic. We don't understand the rest of the world. And here's Huntington making these predictions, making these statements about culture in a very ignorant and overly simplified way, which is only playing into the world's view of us. And so it's strengthening these cultural differences that may have not really existed. And so that kind of brings me into my second point, which is that Huntington's views and his theory, I think, can just kind of be a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I can give an example in U.S. politics, you could say there's a pretty huge fault line between the liberals and the conservatives right now in the United States. However, the more that we focus on those differences, the larger that divide is going to grow. So I remember in my lifetime, I mean, I'm not that old, but even in my lifetime, that divide, that fault line wasn't always as big as it is now. But the more that the media and the politicians talk about this difference, and they kind of use this extremist example of liberals or conservatives, the more that those extremes end up getting brought about. And so in response to this extremist conservative view that people have been talking about, that's kind of how we got Bernie Sanders, I believe. And in response, kind of at the same time, we got Donald Trump. Donald Trump was brought about to kind of combat these extremist liberals, which weren't really as much of a threat to the conservatives as I think they thought it was. But then the liberals ended up combating Donald Trump and becoming the thing that they were portrayed to be. And so I don't know if this is making that much sense, but my point is culture and differences in culture are worth noting. They're worth analyzing, but the more we focus on them, the more relevant they become. And so if we don't focus on them in this kind of extremist, overly simplistic view, they won't be as much of a problem and they won't be as worth analyzing. So the less we focus on it, the less we need to focus on it, if that makes sense. Okay, thank you.